We are in the symposium called Integrated Pest Management, Working with Nature. And you are representing PAN Europe organization, which is trying to find bio-alternatives to normal pesticides to fortify farming. What is exactly that you are doing? Could you say your name and your profession?
Yes, well, our organization is called Pesticide Action Network Europe, and it's a global organization. It's the regional center of a global organization that works to replace hazardous pesticides with environmentally friendly alternatives. Now, myself, because I have a background in toxicology, environmental toxicology, I work more to raise awareness on the toxicity of certain pesticides that pesticides can have, and push for the banning. So, yeah, I'm more into the detecting the problem, and then we have these kind of events where we also present the solutions.
Now lately, when we raise the question about pesticides and herbicides and also glyphosate, which is an ingredient of some concrete product, then we find different, let's say, organizations' positions. That one says that it's probably not cancerogenic, ERC says that it's probably cancerogenic, WHO or EFSA, they say that it's not enough medical evidence or any research. There has to be so much to be done to prove that it's harmful for the hormone system in humans. What is your position and opinion as a toxicologist and a representative of the PAN Europe organization?
Okay, well, pesticides, the way that we understand, the way they've been fabricated, they are by nature toxic to living organisms. They're made to repel and toxify to an extent pests, and pests are living organisms, so they are biologically active. And it's not surprising that they have effects to other non-target organisms like non-pests, and that includes humans as well and other mammals. So in the past we didn't know that, we were quite naive, so we fabricated them and we started using them extensively. And now we see that it creates a problem not on farmers only, because that was the first thing we're regulating, but also on consumers, residents in agricultural areas, as well as the environment and the ecosystem. So in 2018, that we are now, we have ways not to use pesticides. There are solutions, and we believe to focus in these solutions. We ask regulators to focus on these solutions and start by phasing out the use of these toxic chemicals.
When we talk to farmers and people dealing with the soil and crops, they are very much afraid of resigning from pesticides because they will stop being efficient, competitive, they will have the risk of losing crops. Are some solutions discovered by you or proposed by you to farmers that are as efficient and as competent to normal conventional pesticides, that they will not lose crops and still be ecological?
Yes, this is the question that is asked to us many times, and this is why we also organize these sort of events, because we want people to know that there are other ways of farming than using pesticides. Like, for example, you have first of all, you cannot have a monoculture. You need to work with nature. So you need to have various species. You need to have species that are tolerant to the climate conditions. For example, if you want to grow avocados in, I don't know, the north of Europe, maybe you will have a problem. But this goes also with other types of varieties, like cereal crops, maybe some the more resistant than others, tolerant to diseases and all this. And then you have all these other techniques. Now, if we look into them, they use lots of species. They use like one that can work to fight pests, and the other crop might attract, and then of course we have the ecosystem services, because if you have a fertile land and you have a lot of species, then you're going to attract all the natural predators, the ones that you really need, and that actually do what pesticides would do for you, because they kill the pests that you probably don't want naturally. And you also have the soil diversity, because we have to say that, for example, if you use pesticides to treat your crop, you're not killing just your pests. So you might killing other organisms and microorganisms inside the soil that help to have in the plant's defense against diseases. So what farmers tell us many times is, by using all these different pesticides, not only you get the tolerance, the pesticide tolerance, as we know that the pests are tolerant to certain pesticides, but you also get the development of diseases, so you are forced to use more pesticides. So we call this like a pesticide treadmill, that farmers cannot go away from it. So now, if we want to change this, farmers cannot be left alone to change. They need support. For example, it cannot be possible that a farmer that is doing massive, intensive farming receives a lot of support from the government and the subsidies to have this farm, and then a smaller farmer that is not destroyed, it doesn't have so much impact in the environment and it protects biodiversity, it doesn't receive anything.
That's correct, but what is it exactly that pesticides, and especially those aggressive types, are able to do to our body? What is it that we should be afraid of?
Yeah. Well, let's say that the most aggressive ones, we have banned them already. They are, of course, still fabricated by the same companies, but they're not selling them, for example, in Europe because they're banned. Now what we have are the other ones that they take longer to manifest the adverse effects and the diseases. And this is what we are, like, for example, we see an increase in endocrine-related cancers. We see a prostate cancer increase in men, breast cancer in women. Of course, they say some regulators argue that these are treatable diseases, but what about the impact that has on the personal life of a person, of someone, its family, and so forth. And the other thing that we are very concerned is the environment is not taken into account. Biodiversity is disappearing. We have taken some policies there to control it, and it's almost impossible because although we're producing new policies, biodiversity is going down. So we need to take serious actions. And one of the intensive agriculture has a massive impact on biodiversity.
In the last conference in Danish embassy, we heard that there is a lot of evidence that lower biodiversity in the soil and in our globe is the reason for long-term diseases in humans, and not only in humans, also in mammals and also in plants. So what is the quick step solution?
Regulate them, make the regulation more strict. Right now, regulators are based on their own testing methods. So it's difficult to authorize a pesticide. It costs a lot of money, but also this shows how profitable business it is, because pesticides are sold all around the world. What they have to do is they have to do some specific testing using specific animal models and some other models, and now what we see is we have all these other studies that come from academia and independent scientists that they do research, so they detect these effects, and they're not necessarily, you don't have to test them in, for example, in your animal models, you don't need to test them, so companies don't test them. But then you have all this evidence that comes from outside the company and outside the industry testing, that they prove that there is adverse effects. There is some kind of disease. Like you mentioned earlier, we've seen some, it's in terms of research, it's really important evidence how pesticides may affect the fauna of the gut and the intestinal flora and fauna. So this could have an effect like diseases, immunotoxicity, like the immune system, allergies. It could be related to that. But the thing is, the industry doesn't need to do these tests. And if the regulators don't take into account these academia tests that they give this evidence, then it means, that these pesticides are going to be authorized and they're going to be sold for another 10, 15 years.
Or more. So, concluding our discussion, it's probably listening to independent scientists. This is something that we have to do.
Well, in Europe, we're lucky. We have already the precautionary principle, and we already have in the regulation that all available scientific data has to be taken into account. The thing is that we have a giant against us, which is a very profitable business, like the pesticide industry, and it's hard to make this happen. They go too much into detail. They say there is a certainty. Well, there's always a certainty, but that's why we have the precautionary principle. You don't need to be certain. If you have some suspicion that something is causing harm, if you have some studies that show that there is a chemical that causes some kind of adverse effects in different types of animals, this should be enough evidence for not spraying these chemicals in open fields.
So what would you recommend to a normal mother making some shopping in the store?
I think there we all have a role. I think we need to be more responsible of our choices and to help the market to direct the market towards this way. If the regulators don't do it, if the industry doesn't do it, then we do it. And we ask for this. We ask for cleaner we ask for biological alternatives. We go and search for organic food that is produced as much locally as possible, directly to the producer. We have to push to change this model.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, as we can see from this work, there are a range of indicators that can possibly be used to estimate the effect of pesticide on soil microorganisms. And at ISO, International Standard Organization, there are ongoing work to establish new standards to measure the activity of soil microorganisms, but also the abundance and the diversity. And ongoing work at ISO is done to establish a list of criteria for the selection of indicators for microbial functional indicators, new one, and to identify the most suitable functional indicators in soil microbiology. This is done with the aim to develop a package of standards to measure the abundance, diversity, and activity of functional yields supporting soil ecosystemic.
I thank you for your attention, and I just wanted to finish with a quote of Charles Darwin, who was really keen on earthworms. He wrote, "Without the work of this humble creature, who knows nothing about the benefits it confers you upon mankind, agriculture as we know it would be very difficult, if not wholly impossible, and I would say not sustainable. Thank you.